What's going on, everybody? We're back with another edition of the Bird's Nest. I'm Tanner Gilmartin alongside Max Gritzula. And this week, just like last week, we're going over a win, but not a pretty win. We beat the Dallas Cowboys, which it always is a mood booster going into the week, knowing you beat the Dallas Cowboys. All right, you have that. Honestly, this team could be defeated, and as long as we beat the Dallas Cowboys, I'm all right for that week. But 23-9 was the final score. Carson Wentz, not a good performance. 15 of 27, 123 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 2 fumbles, which were both lost. Carson Wentz, he had 4 turnovers in the first 33 minutes of this game. That makes him with 16 turnovers throughout the season. Max, what through all this play and the ups and downs, mostly downs of this game, what shined through? What impressed you the most?
What impressed me the most, I guess, was probably the defense overall. They got healthy. Vontae Maddox came back. Hargrave surprisingly had a pretty solid game. Probably the first eye-opening performance that he's had this season. Fletcher Cox got 50.5 career sacks now, so that was pretty awesome to see. But overall, the defense played pretty solid. I don't want to give him too much credit because it was Ben DiNucci. He threw 21 of 40, so just over 50% completion percentage. So Ezekiel Elliott as well didn't have his best game on the ground, 19 carries for 63 yards. So, you got to give the defense credit for holding Zeke in check and at least proving that Ben DiNucci does not belong in the NFL.
He got what he asked for. He told the Eagles, he said, bring on the defense. We've got something planned. And apparently the team didn't get the message because they did not have anything planned. 0 touchdowns for Ben DiNucci and the offense. Now, you mentioned Fletcher Cox on the defense and Brandon Graham. He's now the only player in the NFL with 7 sacks and 10 tackles for a loss. He's been impressive. He leads the team. I want to highlight TJ Edwards' performance on defense. He had 12 tackles, and he got that sack fumble where Rodney McLeod ran it to the house, which I just have one thing to say about that. You play until the whistle blows, and Rodney McLeod almost got chased down. And
Yeah,
he
Zeke
probably
almost
would have
got to him.
lost that ball because he wasn't expecting anyone to be behind him. But that's beside the fact. A touchdown's a touchdown. What happened to this team, Max? What did you want to see more out of this Eagles offense and defense? Because they're playing against a quarterback who's making his first career start in the NFL.
Yeah.
What did you expect out of this Eagles team?
Well, with regard to the defense, I think the one play that you mentioned there, we got kind of lucky on that play, in my opinion. I think that Vinny Curry had the ball kind of wrapped up, and he was probably touched down. But, you get some luck on your side on that play. And, yeah, you're right. Rodney McLeod almost got chased down by Zeke and got the ball punched out. But overall, I think the things that you got to look at and say they need improvement is one, Carson Wentz being able to take care of the football. I mean, the first turnover he had where he was, again, scrambling out like he always does, trying to find a receiver. Usually our receivers are not open, and he just gets run over by that corner safety and loses the ball. I mean, I thought he got hurt, honestly, because he got hit so hard. Luckily, he didn't. But that was a bad turnover. And, again, the throws down the field, I get it. It was super windy in that game, and he threw a bomb to John Hightower. It got picked off by Diggs. But you can't just wing it downfield and start throwing a prayer and hoping. I mean, that was just a bad pass. I guess the good news is they caught it. I mean, they did bring it back to like the 30, but it was almost like a punt, so to speak. And then the one that Diggs picked off in the end zone, some people are saying he tried to throw it away. I don't know if I agree with that. I think he's trying to force a window that's not there. But listen, at this point, we have to say Wentz clean up the turnovers, and he's simply not doing it. So, yeah, we beat up on the Giants last week. We beat up on the Cowboys this past week. But when we have to play good teams, I mean, we still have some teams that are better than us on paper. Green Bay, New Orleans, Arizona. It's a tough schedule. And if we don't clean up these mistakes, we're in for a tough stretch.
Yeah, it seemed like Carson Wentz was in the giving spirit following Halloween. He was just giving that defense a bunch of treats, but the Eagles defense held Zeke and Cooper up pretty well. Amari Cooper, he just caught the ball, I believe, one time for 5 yards. And even with Slay out, He got, of course, Darius Slay got injured, and
Missed the
still,
second half.
yeah, Cooper was not an issue in this game. Now that could be if that could be just because Ben DiNucci is under center and he's not going to be able to find Amari Cooper as much.
Mhm.
Do you think if Dak Prescott or Andy Dalton was in this game, do you think this would be an Eagles loss?
I think that if Dak Prescott was in the game, I think it would have been an Eagles loss. I do. One, yeah, Michael Gallup played really well. 7 catches, 61 yards. He got targeted a lot, was probably 12 times, which is season high for him. But Amari Cooper, I mean, listen, you're talking about one of the best receivers in the game. I'm sure Dak Prescott would have threw the ball his way more than just once or twice. And also another thing that was eye-opening was the fact that Ezekiel Elliott only had 1 catch for 10 yards. Usually they like to get him involved in the passing game. I don't think Andy Dalton would have made much of a difference, but he might have been able to get him at least in the end zone in this game. I know for a fact that Dak Prescott would have been able to do that. So, yeah, I think if Dak Prescott, and you asked me if he was playing and healthy in this game, he would have put a couple touchdowns on the Eagles defense, especially because DiNucci was moved the ball a few times. He got it down to about the 40 or 30-yard line, just wasn't able to get it in the end zone. And, Zerline had a crazy field goal before the half. He wouldn't have had to settle for a bunch of field goals if
Right.
Prescott was in the game.
Yeah, I think if Andy Dalton is even quarterback in this game, I think this is a really close game, and maybe the Eagles still hang on, but I think
It's
it's definitely
possible.
closer
I
than
mean, but you got to
the
remember,
Cowboys just having 9.
last week against Washington, Dalton did not look good at all, even when he was healthy.
Right.
So that's kind of what holds me back there.
Yeah, I just think Darius Slay, as we mentioned, was out in the second half of the game. I think if Dalton's back there, he takes advantage of that and
Yeah.
gives Cooper more looks. Nonetheless, the Cowboys they have a little more struggles than the Eagles going forward, and now they're facing the Pittsburgh Steelers, while the Eagles try to get a little more healthier for that
Yep.
bye week, but the Cowboys are going to have a tough matchup against the Steelers. We saw the Steelers come away with the victory against Lamar Jackson, who is struggling with his
Mhm.
performance. The Steelers are undefeated, and if they win next week, that's a franchise best
Right.
record thus
Yeah, they're the best
far.
team in
Is
football,
there
no doubt.
is there any hope for the Cowboys going forward? If this Cowboys team loses to the Steelers, I think the Eagles are comfortable with that first place.
Yeah, I think from a Cowboys perspective, the trade deadline's coming up this week. I think you would be surprised if they didn't make any moves. I know there's rumors that Michael Gallup could be traded because of the fact that they already have 2 solid receivers in CD Lamb and Amari Cooper. One thing that you saw in this game that you didn't want to see from a turnover standpoint is the fact that the Cowboys had 2 interceptions. They came into this game only having 1 all season long, and they were able to pick Wentz off twice. And again, like you mentioned, if Dak Prescott plays, if the Cowboys get 4 turnovers, they force 2 fumbles on Wentz, they force 2 interceptions on Wentz, and give Dak plus field position. I mean, look out. So, yeah, a win's a win. And I said last week that you just want to win 1 week in advance and see what happens the following week. But because of the fact that we're seeing so much poor football being played by the Eagles, you can't like the direction that this team's heading, and you definitely don't buy. I know we're in first place at 3-4-1, but do you really want to give up picks and assets down the line for a team that has a losing record?
Right. This team, it's they. I still think they're going to be sellers. There's not really a lot to sell, but
Right.
I think they're going to take advantage of. Even though they're in first place, this team needs a lot of work, and I hope that Howie Roseman and Jeffrey Lurie don't use this first place as an excuse not to improve the team right now and say that we're on a good 2-game win streak against the Cowboys and the Giants, and that's enough for them. I hope that's not the case, but I wouldn't be
I agree.
surprised. And then so after the bye, the Eagles have the Giants, the Browns, the Seahawks, a bunch of teams over 500. The
Right.
Cowboys only have 2. The next two games, I believe, are the teams over 500, or they only have 2 remaining games against teams that are currently over 500. What is your prediction along the stretch? Do the Eagles come up with some surprise wins, or is it just we're just winning the division games and nothing more?
We're winning the division games and nothing more, but I think that's still going to give us a first place victory in this division because of the fact that the Cowboys are so poor and the Giants and Washington football team are also bottom feeders as well. The only surprise that I could see is the Washington football team winning this division. I think it's going to come down to Washington and the Eagles. And I give the nod right now to the Eagles, but don't sleep on the Washington football team. Their schedule is very easy here down the stretch. They have a few weak opponents, the Bengals, the Cowboys still. They have division games. And they could sneak one out here, especially because I like their defensive front and I guess defense as a whole, especially watching them play last week. They're coming off a bye this week. So we have one more game against them. That could be for the division, in my opinion.
I gotta be honest. I think the Eagles can pull off a win against the Cleveland Browns. That's a team that I'm really highlighting down the stretch. They lose Odell Beckham Jr., but of course there's
Right.
controversy saying this team's better without
Possible.
OBJ, and they have Rashard Higgins who's taken over for OBJ, and him and Baker Mayfield apparently have a good chemistry. But
Yeah.
I think this Browns team is beatable, and to the Eagles too. But for us to be maybe an estimate of what a six win team hosting a playoff game at the link is just not satisfying for me. And I'd rather improve the team and not make the playoffs. But that's just where I stand. Where do you stand? Would you rather win a couple more games and go to the playoffs with this current team right now, or would you rather don't think about the playoffs and you make moves in free agency and
Well,
draft wise?
yeah, I think now the fact that we're in first place and we also don't really have too much competition, in my opinion, I think you have to go for the playoffs, but that does not mean buy and give up draft capital or assets, right? We thought that Zach Ertz could be on the move, he gets hurt. We thought Deshaun Jackson could be on the move, he gets hurt. So I think if we make a move or two to maybe shed some cap space or upgrade at an offensive line position. I don't think there's going to be a big move being made. At least I hope not, because you have to be realistic about the situation. But the fact of the matter is the Cowboys are an awful, awful football team. The Giants are terrible as well. And like I mentioned previously, you have to look out for that Washington team. But again, with Kyle Allen at quarterback, I just don't see how the Eagles don't win this division. So if you ask me, I go for the playoffs because of the fact we're hosting a home playoff game, and you never ever know with Carson Wentz. I mean, sometimes he comes out, he looks like top 5 quarterback in the league, and then there's other times where he looks like he's a rookie quarterback. So what I want to ask you, what your opinion on him going forward here? I mean, are you is this our franchise quarterback? I mean, you've seen a large enough sample size at least this season. Also, this is what his 5th year in the league. Do you expect him to be here for at least the next couple of years? Or do you think it just depends on maybe where this season goes?
I think I'm gonna say Carson Wentz. This year he's our franchise quarterback, but next year going on, he will not be our franchise quarterback.
It's definitely possible. 2 things before we wrap up. One real quick here. We need to improve the weapons around them. I don't want to give up on them because of the fact that we still need to upgrade our offensive line. And our 2 best players on offense right now are Travis Fulgham, who we just picked up off the practice squad, and Rager, who just finally came back from injury. So overall, and also the second point I want to make here is the fact that we're in first place and the rest of the division is so poor. I think that's what I want to emphasize. The rest of the division is so poor. It's not like we have a couple of decent, teams that could probably, knock us off or have a tiebreaker in the division. Like say the Cowboys were to beat us the second time. I don't think that's going to happen. So I think the fact that we're really pegged as the best team in this division makes me want to just stay pat and see where this goes down the stretch, because I don't want to give up on Carson yet, especially with Miles Sanders banged up all season long for the most part, and our receiving core and Ertz banged up. Dallas Goedert finally just came back. I mean, there's so many injuries.
Yeah, you mentioned that Washington team giving us a run for our money in dramatic fashion. That's our last game of the season against the Washington football team. So, of course, another nail-biting season finale for the Eagles. And that's going to do it for us this episode, guys. Tomorrow is the day. Go out and vote.